is my presentation on enhancing public libraries service with artificial intelligence, the good, the bad, and the ugly for ISCI 706. To begin, I'd like to start by defining what AI is. AI is a computer program created as a tool. It's designed to mimic human ideas and thought. There's two sides to AI. Which we'll discuss later in these slides. There's an open source and a closed source AI. Both things have different uses. It's part of the good, the bad, and the ugly. AI within public libraries can be used to jumpstart programming ideas, help to write social media posts, and provide library stats quickly. I have a ChatGPT screenshot that I got from my coworker, actually, that uses ChatGPT to create her programming. And on the side you can see there's storytime ideas, there's an explanation, and she simply just gave the prompt at the top. There are other positives for that as well. When it comes to library stats, although AI can be used for good, we must be mindful not to put the full faith in the AI because they are computer generated answers. They often can give information that might be inaccurate, which there's another screenshot there. And the inaccuracies are part of the bad that can happen within the public libraries and the use of AI because it doesn't replace the human mind or our ideas. This is the open source AI, which I found from an article. Open source AI must still be used ethically and carefully as we seek to use it as a tool because it is an algorithm that can learn based on questions it's asked. So that provides a more precise answer. Like if I were to open an open source AI and ask it the same question every day, I could probably get a different answer based on what it learns I want. So if I were to say what plants are in bloom today, it could tell me today, and if I did that for a year, it could tell me all the plants in bloom for the season because it knows what season it is because it's using the open source data for the dates and the season it should be and the location I'm in. Again, we must remember it's a tool and it's not meant to replace or think for the human counterparts, which is something we talk about within the library system and the schools as well. As we struggle to navigate these new tools, we tend to see there's either an all or nothing mindset right now because we don't have an ethical groundwork for what AI is and how it can be used responsibly, which leads us to the bad. There's a lack of human interaction, and this is specifically when I refer to it in the library services arena. There are technical challenges and limitations, which is something I spoke about when I'm talking about the open source or the closed source. The closed source can provide for outdated information, so you might ask it a question and it gives you an answer that is not valid for the time period, or if you're using open source AI, anyone can feed it an answer, so it might be incorrect. So you have to be mindful of that. Job displacement is something people kind of worry about. I would say what I've seen in my public library is when we talk about AI, it's more of the not necessarily job displacement, but what parts of the job can be taken away from the human aspect. So like if you're a programmer, if you're allowing AI to do your programming, then are you really doing your job and thinking for yourself? As far as a lack of personalization, that also comes when we talk about more about closed AI, because it doesn't necessarily learn from what's happening. So if you wanted to get book recommendations, it could give you book recommendations, but it's not going to remember the list of books that you might have and give you recommendations on that. You would just be able to get recommendations based on one book and the synopsis that the program has of that book, which if the synopsis is outdated or if it's a book that the system doesn't have information on, then it can't give you the accurate next read. Which brings me to the next point, which is the ethical consideration and the biases within AI. Because AI can further the already social biases and or the inequalities within a community, again, simply because some of the information is outdated or the program is programmed with programmer bias in mind, then we have to be mindful of that as a library and as information and knowledge seekers and keepers. We have to be aware that these biases exist and use them responsibly. So when we're talking about programming or using them to organize statistics, those are data points that don't have bias in them if we are specific enough. But when we're talking about book recommendations, it's possible to have the system provide us with bias information just because it's not fed the information that might fit your communities or your patron. So that would mean, like, if they're looking for like an LGBTQIA plus representation in books, but the AI system you're using is a closed AI source that hasn't been given that information, then it might say that there's nothing in your collection that fits that, when in reality there is, which is creating a bias for that patron. The other ethical concern is, for us as librarians, is how do we maintain our ethical use of information, so we don't just want to fully rely on AI for the end-all be-all source of information because of these biases. And in that, we have to dig deeper into what artificial intelligence is and can become, and how we within our systems can either choose to embrace it and use it as a tool, or to categorically say that it is not something we would like to use. There's also the concerns with the privacy concerns. When we think about using an open source AI versus a closed AI, it's important to understand, if we're going to use open source, that we have to be able to maintain patron information as well as intra-library policies that we might not want open to the public. So we'd have to be mindful of those when we're looking into creating AI systems. Overall, I would say that AI is going to be a continual topic within the information services arena simply because it is growing and it's ever changing, and there's things we are learning still in how information is processed and collected, and how we can safely, ethically, and responsibly use these tools for good as we seek to grow within our systems and grow in our patron reach.